which hopefully later on I'll be able to put across, which is going to take this much further.
Okay.
So in fact, political parties might rue the day that they pass this amendment.
Okay, Dr. Ansari, what are your first thoughts?
Well, I think it will be very unfortunate if an amendment is passed to exclude the political parties from the ambit of the RTI Act, because we do consider that the process that is followed in conducting elections and the politicians, they are the organizations which govern the whole country, and they are influencing almost entire policy making, the programs and implementation, and that leads to huge allocation of resources wherefrom they make a lot of money. That is something which is very well known. But even then, if an amendment is passed and the political parties are excluded, as Professor Shekhar Singh said, that the nation, the citizens are not going to stop, because there are very effective provisions in the RTI Act which will not allow them to escape from the corrupt practices. For example, I may mention under section 2F of the RTI Act, there are provisions that any information which can be accessed by any public authority can also be obtained by any information seeker. What it means that most of the political parties and the politicians, they are governed and they are regulated by the Election Commission, and the Election Commission is the appropriate authority through which that information could be accessed. That is number one.
Okay.
Number two, I would like to say that even those organizations which are excluded, from the RTI Act, the information relating to human rights violation and corruption can be accessed again. And then under section 5(4), it allows that anyone who is a custodian excluded from this.
Okay, so you're saying that the CIC can take the Election Commission route, they can ask the Election Commission to furnish information.
Exactly, and that possibility is very much there, and therefore it is through the Election Commission that even section 20 of the Act, which is a major enforcement clause under which penalty is imposed, the CIC can still impose, because they can hold that the information, the custodian of information, which may be an office bearer of a political party, he would be treated as a CPIO, and therefore, to my mind, it is possible to do that, and it has been done in cases of many of the private sector players. For instance, the private schools, private colleges, private hospitals, they have been approached and the information has been obtained and provided, and wherever they have faltered, penalty has been imposed on them. So what I'm briefly trying to say is that although it may be unfortunate if the political parties are excluded, but even if it is excluded, the citizens would still have provisions under 2F to access the information, and they cannot escape from hiding information. They'll have to put in the public domain.
Okay, Varghese?
Well, I have I would broadly agree with my panelists on the broader point that there has to be more transparency and accountability vis-a-vis the functioning of even the internal functioning of each political parties. But I have two disagreements, which is that I don't agree with the basic premise that political parties are the basis or the core of corruption in our system. They are one of the many reasons, and I would say there are much bigger or more intense reasons than political parties and their functioning. So that and even this increasing tendency to blame political parties and political leaders for the overall degeneration that we face and the corruption in all our systemic functioning and tendency to be against the democratic process per se, and then extend that argument to say that okay, you get rid of them, and that is one part of my disagreement. The second thing is that even if you assume that the CIC order stands and political parties are indeed brought under the RTI, the projected optimism or the very optimistic way of looking at that will actually bring about transparency in the functioning of the political parties also is a rather misplaced assumption, because what my esteemed panelists said about the corrupt practices that the political party may practices that they might adopt in their functioning those are never going to come out
Okay.
as a result of an RTI, because those are shady deals which they might strike. They will not leave trail and record of what they did vis-a-vis that. So it will actually lead to a lot of frivolous RTI complaints,
Okay.
RTI information about how they function, how they picked up or chose a particular candidate, how they arrived at a decision on there should be 25 kilos of rice rather than 35 kilos under food security, sorry, whatever the quantity is, 5 kilos kind of thing. It will never lead to the actual objective of bringing about transparency in how internal decisions are made.
Okay.
And lastly, a lot of financial transactions or the contributions which are made to political parties, they are also being subject to election commission guidelines.
Right.
Most political parties, I think, are abiding by those guidelines. Those information are available from the election commission. So I am really open to be corrected on this issue. I don't know what extra information are we going to seek and get from a political party if they are indeed brought under
Okay,
RTI.
okay, we'll have Dr. Singh respond to that, and I'll come to Dr. Ansari also after this short break. When we come back, we also look at some of the arguments that have been put forth by political parties as well as activists who are supporting the CIC order, asking for coverage of the political parties to come under RTI coverage. Stay with us, we'll be right back. Welcome back to Insight. We are discussing right to information and political parties, whether or not the Right to Information Act should be extended to political parties. Dr. Singh, you know, those who argue that the extension of the coverage of the RTI to political parties is unwarranted, they also say that, you know, the political parties cannot be deemed as public authorities, as the CIC has ruled that they can be considered public authorities. What would you say? Do you think political parties, is it fair to consider them public authorities? The political parties argue they are voluntary organizations.
See, the debate of whether they are public authorities or not has been left behind, because if the parliament has produced a bill amending the act, then the assumption is that as the act stands, they are public authorities, then you need to amend them. So we won't waste time getting to the merits of that, but in brief I'd say yes, I think they were, because NGOs also, if they get substantive funding, are public authorities, and they got substantive funding, so they were public authorities. But we won't get into that, it's now a moot argument. 2 or 3 very important issues have been raised by Mr. Verghese. For example, number one, and I totally agree with him, that our urge to clean up politics should not convert into an anti-democratic urge. I have myself been arguing, in fact, I've been arguing against institutions like all-powerful lokpals who are not answerable to anybody, saying that, look, you cannot take shortcuts. And you cannot say, because our politicians are not working the way we want them to work, so let's set up a institution outside this. Actually, it will be worse, because at least the politicians are answerable to some extent. You set up these institutions who are not answerable to anybody, it's terrible. So I'm totally with him there. The second point about whether politicians are also partly responsible, my purpose is served. But the most important point he made was, what are you going to get from the RTI? Now, I like to very quickly tell him what we would get. First of all, if you want to find out what the illegalities are, you first have to be able to find out what the legalities are, and then say, okay, now where are the surpluses? Today, I can't even do that. Why I can't do that? Because under the Income Tax Act, they're only required to report donations which are over 20,000 rupees.
Correct.
Now, do you know, we did a survey, 2010, 2011, these 11 political parties got 11,000 million rupees in donations. 11,000 mean by their own. Only 10% of that was above 20,000 rupees. So 90% of that, there is no account where it came from. Now, how does one get down to this? You can only get down to this. For example, we've done a small exercise. We've said we have statistics of how many people voted for each party. We've done a survey of how many people who vote actually give donations. If you put both together, then if you divide the total donations with that, you find that every donation is 44,000 rupees. How do they work out? How do you expose these things? How do you bring them to public ridicule? Maybe you can't take legal action, but I can bring it to public ridicule, and political parties are sensitive to public ridicule. Stop at one point. Number two, what else do we want? Political parties make promises in their manifestos and public pronouncements. They say, we support women's rights. I want to ask them, how many women applied for tickets?
Okay.
And what percentage got tickets? And could you please tell me why you did not pick these women? What was wrong with them? Now, let them then come and tell the public, what are they? Are they genuine? You know, in the private sector, there's a law that if you mislead the public by false advertising, you can be penalized.
But you know, political parties argue that this is something that would compromise their privacy. This is all about it's an internal matter, internal workings of political
they are
parties.
looking for my vote. You see, if they said, we are not interested in you, we are only interested in our members, we'll deal with them, then why are you coming to me for a vote? They are looking for my vote. They are looking for my support. They are telling me, look, if you give us money, if you support us, if you go vote, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do this. If a company promised me that if I put some cream on my face, I'll become very fair, and if it didn't happen, I can sue them. If a political party promises me that they're going to bring equality for women and doesn't do anything about it, why don't I have a right to even know?
Okay.
So what is the privacy involved in this? Similarly, don't I have a right to know why they did not pursue what they promised in their manifestos and what was their problems?
Okay.
When are they going to deliver? Now, these are important issues. Today, let me just finish by adding, people argue that no other country covers the political party. That's not true. Recent research done by CHRI shows that there are 40 countries which ask all these questions under various laws. And let me say today that I would much prefer if we didn't have to bring political parties under the RTI, if under the People's Representation Act, Income Tax Act, all these questions could have been asked and answered. Reason being not because I don't like the RTI Act, but because the penalties in those acts are much stronger than under the RTI Act. Here you can only fine them 25,000 rupees. If you give a false answer to the Election Commission, you can get debarred as a party. But because there is no chance of that happening, this is the best we can fight for.
Okay, but Dr. Ansari, do you think political parties have a valid claim when it comes to safeguarding their privacy, other than, you know, their finances? Should internal workings of a political party, you know, their internal votes and strategies, etc., should they be made public?
Well, on the issue of whether or not the political parties should be covered under this RTI Act, I mean, there are two aspects which are to be considered together. Number one is under Section 2H, as now the appropriate government and competent authority, they are expected to do carry out certain responsibilities in terms of implementation of the Act and formulation of the policy, and also further reforms, further amendments in the Act. Now, the political parties are neither covered under the appropriate government, nor they are covered under the competent authority. Only 5 competent authorities have been defined in the Act, and they are covered in none. You know, I don't want to go in more details. Now, let us go a bit further. Take Section 4, 1 of the Act, which is said to be the heart of the RTI Act, which allows disclosure of details of the information. Now, in this section, all the public authorities are expected to provide the details of the decision-making processes, including the functions that they perform, like subsidy, the beneficiaries. The details have to be put in public domain, and more importantly, they are also expected to reveal and disclose to the people as to what policy decisions they are going to take, even for, say, example, if they want to have the manifesto or how they are going to implement, or they have also to record the reasons for every action that they take. Now, the point here is that the political parties, being the voluntary organizations, they do not make any some such recordings, and we consider a public authority, but most of the political parties are the family business. I mean, they are the family fiefdom. You know, so how do we expect the compliance of Section 4.1? Again, I do not want to go more details in the whole thing. Now, take Section 5, which requires the public authority to appoint PIOs. Now, there are those who are having the criminal records, and they are also the office bearers within different political parties, if any one of them is appointed as a PIO, for example, now who will dare to go and ask for the information? High command, as they make use of it. This doesn't come under the provisions of the RTI Act. Again, when we look at the enforcement clauses, because the RTI has been successful, to my mind, is largely because there are enforcement clauses, and the Central Information Commission and the Information Commission in the states, they have very effectively used the penalty clauses, and also awarding compensations. So award of compensation to the information seeker has encouraged them to put in more and more application, at the same time imposition of penalty and recommendation for taking disciplinary action has also discouraged many of the information providers to provide the information as and when they are asked to do that. So I mean, that way the disclosure has been possible. So because of certain provisions which are under section 4(1) of the Act, they are expected to disclose, but most of the political parties, the manner in which they function, they don't put in the public domain and they are not covered. So the essential features or the salient features of their functioning has not been captured in this Act. So if you have to make the political party also as a part of this Act, then you have to carry out further amendments to make sure that their activities are properly captured, and then they are also made accountable to the people by and large. Then we also see that some of the provisions which require to facilitate the process of providing information, making the decision-making processes, as I mentioned to you, the appropriate government and the competent authority. I mean, these are not applicable. And under Section 25, which empowers the Central Information Commission to monitor, the implementation of within the existing provisions can be accessed through Election Commission, as I said before, or if really we want to bring in the political parties under the ambit of RTI Act, then we have to carry out further amendments so that just like any other government department, they are also brought into and they are also covered under the definition of competent authority and the appropriate government. Only then CIC will be able to effectively enforce. At this point of time, I see that the CIC, although has taken a decision and hold them as a public authority, but it cannot enforce this decision, and therefore I consider there is something flaw either in the RTI Act or in the decision that has been passed.
All right, well, we'll come back to that very interesting point you've just made in the program. We'll take Varghese views on the same as well when we return from this quick break. Stay with us. Welcome back to Insight. We are discussing right to information and political parties. Varghese, continuing with you, do you think it's fair to expect the political parties to be open about their internal deliberations?
Still would disagree with Professor Singh and Dr. Ansari in substantial ways. I actually, the point that Professor Singh raised about the financial opaqueness that political parties function with, it's at ridiculous levels it is reached. As he rightly pointed out, the donations above 20,000 will have to be declared, and only 10% of the total contributions that they get are accounted as above 20,000, and 90% of it is recorded as less than 20,000. So it's a ridiculous situation, and there will have to be and there must be measures to ensure that there has to be more financial transparency vis-a-vis how political parties mobilize funds, spend fund. There is no doubt about it. But our insistence, or rather obsession, about using information seeking as the only mode of seeking good governance, transparency, I think that may not be the right path to do. So there are various ways to do it. There are other institutions as well. For example, the recent Supreme Court judgment on when does a person becomes disqualified to be a member of the legislature or a parliament. So there are various ways, various things happening. There are debate on electoral reforms.
But they are going to challenge that as well.
No, that is a debate I'm saying.
Yeah.
So the point is that just getting to know that how they select a candidate is not going to solve the problem. Because in politics, the only criteria to be an MP is that people should vote for you. So as far as anybody, whether he is somebody's son-in-law or brother-in-law, whether he is qualified as per existing statute. He is qualified to be contesting and he is winning an election. That's it. So the debate about why he was put out, I think there will be a lot of other issues involved. Then are we going to set criteria, minimum criteria for a politician, or minimum eligibility criteria for a politician? All those things will come into play. And secondly, the idea of it is not very relevant because it's
a certain candidate was selected, perhaps it was based on his caste or money power or muscle power, but this may not be the right way to go about it.
See, as I've already mentioned, if there were other ways of making sure that political parties were transparent, I wouldn't necessarily say RTI is the best way, but there are none. Now, let us take the issue that everybody knows. For example, Ms. Verghese mentioned that people are selected on their winnability. But political parties, let them come out and say that I will give a ticket to a rapist, right, who is convicted but only under appeal, because he has the terror ability to win the elections. How many political parties be willing to say that explicitly? So in the government, you see, political parties are in the business of public perceptions. They have got as far as they've got because they've been allowed to fool the public. In India, people vote for parties. Very rarely do they vote for individuals. And they keep hoping that somebody will be telling the truth somewhere along the line. Now, time has come for the citizens of India to say, look, put your, facts and truth where your manifestos have been, and let us judge for ourselves. This will bring in a certain culture. I am arguing that it will bring in a culture, and this will not happen overnight, where there will be competitive transparency, where parties will get a slight edge if they are more transparent than another party. And this will slowly. Let me put a counter question. What is the option? Do you really believe, as Dr. Ansari rightly said, it's a family business? I'm challenging that 80% of the MPs and 80% of the MLAs in this country are controlled by 20 individuals. 20 individuals. If these 20 individuals see their interests unite, they run the whole of governance. You and I are irrelevant.